Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of the Metabolism and Menopause podcast. My name is Stephanie, and I am your host and CEO of VitalityOET. We are a women's nutrition, health, and fitness company that focuses predominantly on women's hormones, particularly as they start going through perimenopause and onwards. We know that you start experiencing so many changes in this time of your life, whether it be hot flashes, night sweats, irritability, brain fog, or that waking around the middle that seems to have come out of absolutely nowhere despite you not changing anything. So you go back to those tried and true methods of cutting calories, cutting carbs, doing a bunch of cardio, yet nothing seems to be working. It feels like the scale is actually moving in the opposite direction despite your best efforts. But we know now that your body is inherently different than what it was to you prior to you experiencing these hormonal changes. So our mission here at Vitality is to really help you understand how your body changes in this time of your life, so you can reach those health and fitness goals, feel in control and at home in your body again, live a life full of vitality, and really help you understand how to take care of this new body of yours. So today I have a wonderful guest on the podcast. Her name is Taylor Temple. She is a fellow Canadian coach, and we bonded when Andrew Coates introduced us, which is amazing. So today we covered so many things, like what health actually looks like in women, because there's definitely a skewed perception. We talked about nutrition. We talked about health foods, how to manage binge eating and emotions, what self-care actually looks like. We covered so many things in this podcast, and I'm sure there's going to be multiple nuggets that you can use to start moving forward in your health journey. So I hope you enjoy this podcast. Here we go. So today I have the wonderful Taylor Temple. She is a nutrition coach and trainer as well. She is also Canadian, which I always love, and is actually in Edmonton. So very close to where I live. Actually, it's just one province over. I go there quite a bit. So it's nice to meet other people in the field that are like not so far away. So Taylor, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. And yeah, it's nice to talk to someone in the same time zone.
Yes, it's so rare. I'm always talking to people on the East Coast, I feel, these days.
Yeah, doing all the calculations to make sure it aligns. So thank you for having me.
Of course. So Taylor, why don't we just start off by like you introducing yourself a little bit. So for those people who don't know you well, they have an idea of like what you do, how long you've been doing it for, how you got into it, just a little bit about your story.
Absolutely. So, hey, everyone that is listening. So, my name is Taylor Temple. I'm the owner of Mind and Body by Temple. So, it is a holistic health and wellness coaching company. I do focus mostly on pain-free movement and then also women, specifically weight loss and their hormones. I have had some past working workshops for people going through perimenopause, menopause, all of that. So, I'm really well rehearsed in that dynamic working with women. So now I've been in the industry for about 9.5 years. My background before COVID was actually managing corporate gyms and developing teams of personal trainers. And when COVID hit, it was kind of a curse and a blessing for me. I've been working on Mind and Body by Temple for about 6 months at that point. I had tons of experience just working hands-on through the high volume of clientele that we had in the gym. Gym shut down. I was like, okay, I'm going through a divorce at this time too. So I was like, it's time, just new you, let's just go for it, right? So jumped into the unknown, launched my business, and I just have not looked back. It has been the best decision that I've ever made.
That's so funny because like that's literally my story too, was like working in a gym, actually like got fired from that job because I did not like what they were doing and stuff for my staff and they didn't like that. And then it was like, hey, like I already had my business kind of on the side and it was like, hey, I'm going all in. This is the moment. And it's so funny how like those moments of like, oh crap, like what am I going to do end up being like some of the best things for us, which I think is like amazing. So I think that's so funny that it was like the same kind of thing. Hilarious.
And something good comes out of it. Like that is huge. Taking worst case scenario, making it best case scenario.
Exactly. So today we kind of want to talk a little bit about nutrition stuff, obviously for all of you today, but specifically guilt around nutrition because we're so stuck. And I hear this all the time from women of, I only have this at this time, or like, I know I shouldn't have this. It's a bad food, or I have a taste of bad food and I can't control myself around it. And this whole notion of like feeling poorly for decisions that you're making with nutrition, even though they actually aren't as bad as some people like really make it out to be, or they catastrophize and feel like they've like destroyed a whole, all their progress by having one quote unquote bad thing. So like, Taylor, how do you see this come up with clients in terms of like guilt around food choices where like there's maybe some embarrassment or shame, and how do you help them navigate that?
That's huge, especially with how much knowledge and information there's out right now. It's good to really dissect it and pick it apart a bit. So, like, especially with clients, they come to me and they'll express, man, I did this on the weekend. My first thing is take a deep breath because you're not going to gain fat by eating one bad meal or one bad thing that wasn't with your plan. So, give yourself a bit of grace because that's the biggest part of it. But then talking about what's good and what's bad. It's like if you have, let's say, chocolate bar on the weekend, you come back to me and you're feeling guilty about it, or you just kind of go in for the seconds and for the thirds of your meal, it is okay because we can balance that out. Like it's not going to be the end of the world. Give yourself grace because you are human. But then I kind of dive into the mindset aspect of it. It's like if you think you can't, you won't. And if you think you can, you will. And like I'm with Mind and Body by Temple, I think that our mind controls everything. So if you tell yourself, I'm going to eat this or I'm going to eat crappy, chances are you're going to. So because you make one mistake or you eat one chocolate bar, doesn't mean you have to just go off the deep end. You got to make sure that you catch yourself and you say, okay, I had one chocolate bar, but it's going to stop there.
Yeah, and it's like just getting back on track as to like where you were before and not overcompensating. Like I see this all the time where people are like, oh man, I really went off the rails this weekend. I had beer and I had pizza. So like Monday, I'm just going to like really cut down my calories and I'm only going to eat salad and I'm only going to do this. And I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, let's just go back to normal. Like there's no, because otherwise then we get stuck in this crazy like yo-yo up and down of binge restrict, binge restrict, binge restrict, which has gotten a lot of people to like where they are today. So we need to break that cycle.
Absolutely. And people think exactly what you said, the binging of it. Well, I did it one day. Now the rest of the week or the rest of the weekend is going to look like that. And that's exactly it. It's like if you tell yourself you're going to do it, you're going to do it. If you tell yourself you're not going to do it, you're not going to do it.
Well, and I think also with that like binge and restrict kind of mindset, it's like, okay, like then I can't have this. So I'm going to eat all of this, like really make it worth it, have all the things, have the whole bag of potato chips, because then I'm not going to do this again. And it's like, or like we've done this with clients before where it's like, we're having like a small bag of potato chips, like the little mini snack size, 3 days a week. And then it's like you incorporate it. It's not as novel. You have control around it. You learn how to like fit it into your day. And then like you find yourself not even like craving these things or not having this massive like feeling like you can't control yourself around these things anymore because it's not this like once in a lifetime or once in a while kind of thing. But like I feel like that's such a hard thing for people to grasp because they're so afraid of like the potato chip or the chocolate or whatever it is that's kind of like their Achilles heel.
So usually when clients come to me and they're in that situation, I kind of reverse engineer it because it's like, what in your day is triggering you even to crave that? Like, why is this even coming front of mind? So that's why as a nutrition coach, I kind of reverse engineer things. It's like, okay, are you stressed? Is why you're craving that chocolate right now? How are we going to deal with the stress to kind of minimize that? And then when those cravings do arise, what kind of healthy alternative do you have that's readily available that instead of eating the whole bag of chips, maybe we'll have some crispy minis? Or instead of having that chocolate bar, maybe you'll have some dark chocolate or something that isn't just high in those calories and really truly garbage food, I hate to put it that way, but there's no nutrition value.
Yeah, and I always like to ask people like, okay, leading up to this event, the binge or the craving or whatever it was, who was involved? Where were you? How are you feeling? What were the events leading up to it? Because sometimes then you can identify patterns of like, oh, it's when you're around these people, or it's when like you have this routine. It's like always like nighttime watching TV with your partner. How can we like change this, or what can we like add in between to like, create some space between like trigger and like making that choice? or maybe it's like replacing it with something else. Like, how can we navigate this if it's a regular occurrence, or if is it something we can actually avoid in the future? But I think we all just like automatically feel so poorly about ourselves for like doing the thing. Then it's just like we're almost like embarrassed to like look back at it because we just want to like forget it and move on. And I'm like, when has that ever worked with like therapy or relationships? Like, there has to be some communication and awareness and like actually diving a little bit deeper as to, okay, what's actually going on and like causing these things.
Absolutely. And like we are human, we all do it, but it's like we just need to create awareness so we can minimize it moving forward. Like it's okay if you sit down, you have that bag of chips, but did you eat breakfast this morning? Did you have lunch? Was there any protein in your diet today? And 9 times out of 10, people are going to say no. They're going to say, I ate once and then I got home from work. I was super stressed, sat down, and just couldn't stop eating. It's like, well, to me, that makes sense. Like, that is normal human behavior. Anyone in your shoes would have done that. Like,
Yeah. Oh, and that's the big thing too. It's like we're so caught up on like the trends of like the fasting and the, cutting out all the carbs and eating really low calorie. And I'm like, you're so depleted all day and you're tired and you're running on caffeine and there's no energy coming in from like your tiny piece of chicken and the lettuce that you had at lunchtime. That of course, as soon as your body gets time to relax, your body's like, oh man, we gotta do this again tomorrow. We need calories. And like your body will send you all these crazy signals through hormones and everything to eat those foods, to have those cravings. And then we feel poorly like, oh, I'm so out of control. I can't control myself. What's wrong with myself? And it's like, if we can reverse engineer and look at what everything's going on during the day, we can actually identify what the things are. And sometimes there is some stuff where it's like, okay, we need to like work on some of these things. But a lot of the time it's like, if we can address what happens earlier in the day, it's crazy how much better you're going to be later in the day.
absolutely. And being overstimulated and underfed is a recipe for being absolutely exhausted, potentially irritable as well. Like, let's be honest here. Anybody that has not eaten in hours is a little bit irritable and probably anxiety levels too. So you wonder why you're go, go, go all day and you hit the couch and you just absolutely crash. Like,
Exactly. And like, and then when you like talk to them about it, they're like, oh, that does make sense. But it's wild that people aren't taught this stuff. And I think that's where a lot of issues are. It's like, we teach kids lots of stuff in school and growing up and how to play sports, but it's like no one's taught them what like a good meal looks like and what happens to your body when you're not feeding yourself regularly. And I think it's tough because like our parents weren't set up for that information. And now I feel like there's more information available, but it's like, I don't know, like we send our kids to school after having like frosted flakes and then that's it. And it's like, of course they're going to have behavior issues and be irritable and not able to focus. Like they're experiencing blood sugar crashes and then they're grouchy. And it's just like you, like when you're experiencing these things as well, yeah, but they can't manage their emotions yet. So I always think that aspect is always interesting. And I always like to compare things to like kids because I think it's like a good example. It makes people realize like, oh, okay, this makes sense.
and that's a good comparison because they're usually watching it so they can actually observe before they can reflect. And that's huge.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right. That's an issue is that people don't teach us how to take care of ourselves. And that is
Mm-hmm.
so wrong on so many levels. Like you walk into a grocery store and you got this budget and you have 10 for 10 on the right hand side of bags of chips. You have 10 for 10 for chocolate bars on the left hand side while you're in this budget. But nobody's ever taught anyone how to grocery shop and how to actually properly take care of themselves and like compare the nutrition labels. So it's a huge issue, but I mean that's why we do what we do is to create awareness around that.
100%. So talking about grocery shopping, I kind of want to like dive into the whole health foods thing because like we know protein is very important and like it's important, especially in menopause and maintaining muscle mass and helping with blood sugar and all the things. But a lot of people rely on the protein powders and the protein bars and the protein Pop Tarts and the protein cookies and, the protein wraps and all these things. So how do you kind of navigate this stuff with women? Because I don't think we're also like, got to eat clean, can't have processed foods yet. When you look at sometimes people's diets, there's so many of these like quote unquote health foods, which like, let's face it, are not super healthy. They're not whole foods, right? So how do you find that or navigate that with like your clients?
This is a great one. So I think most of the time, it's great that you are doing a high protein wrap. You're doing a high protein bar. Amazing, because that is better than no protein. So I'll start by there. I usually praise them a bit, and then I kind of dissect it. It's like, now we're going to take a peek at that nutrition label. Okay. How many ingredients is on this nutrition label right now? And usually it is 20 ingredients, 15 ingredients. Okay, how many of these can you pronounce? Two, right? And it's like, okay, now this is what we need to create awareness around. Is like, there's so many additives in this. How do you think your body's digesting that? Now let's look at chicken. Let's look at a can of tuna. How many ingredients are in that? One, maybe some salt water, so two, right? And it's like, how do you think your body digests that? So it's like when you do that comparison and you just break it down, it definitely changes the perspective on things because your body obviously digests whole foods much more efficiently. And it's so much better for your microbiome, gut health as well,
Mhm.
compared to all of the additives. So I think that's a really good way to put things in perspective.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people don't realize like a lot of people do have sensitivities to some of those like sugar alcohols and stuff like that. Like for me, I have found like two protein bars that I can actually eat and feel good with. And I still haven't been able to like nail down exactly like what it is about the other ones, like sugar wise or like amounts. Like there's something that like my body, it just hits me like a ton of bricks and I'm like bloated so fast, so quickly. And it's like, okay, this I'm better off just having like, some jerky or something where it's literally like two ingredients. And then you also get people who are worried about like dairy products or cheese. Oh, can I have cheese? And I'm like, okay, but look at like you have to have more whole foods than like processed foods. That's what we want to aim for. But like look at the ingredients of cheese versus ingredients of a protein bar. There's less ingredients and like you can understand what's like in it for the most part, right? So it's that sliding scale of understanding how much or how little to have of certain foods. But as soon as something's called like a quote unquote health food, everyone's like, oh, this must be good when that's not necessarily the case, right?
Right. And that's exactly how much information is out there right now. Everybody has products, and it doesn't necessarily mean that those are the right products for you.
Yeah, exactly.
But also touch base on that, your cheese. Ladies, cheese is okay to eat, but you just can't have the whole brick. Like within moderation, small slices, portion size it, but having a few pieces of cheese is completely okay.
Yeah, exactly. And I also like to touch on with like health foods, like the fiber content sometimes is insane. Like some of those high protein wraps, like I cannot do more than like 20 grams of fiber. Like my digestion just like does not handle it well. I'm always in that 15, 20-ish range. If I'm like 25, 30, like my body's just not loving it, even if I slowly increase. But I look at some of those wraps and it's like 13 grams of fiber in like a keto wrap. And I'm like, hey, where is this coming from? Because fiber comes from plants. And if it's like keto and carbs, like carbs have fiber, I'm like, where is this coming from? So that's all highly processed stuff too. And you digest those fibers different than like natural fibers. And I think again, like people don't realize these things where like, and I just wish it was more accessible and more well known. But of course, it's like people are marketing and wanting to sell their product, right? So it's just such a tough thing to like navigate.
But at the same time, I would be like with my ladies, I say, yeah, if you want to go with the protein wraps, please do, because I'd rather you put that in your body
Oh
than
yeah.
the right ones. So, like, if we want to go devil's advocate and
Hmm.
compare, I would say probably that one. But I would always do like the 12 grain wraps are going to be the best one, or try to
Exactly.
go gluten-free base if you have gluten sensitivities.
Hmm.
But they are substantially better than the white wraps. So if we're doing
Totally.
comparison, yeah, it's okay to choose the protein wraps over the white ones, but there's definitely better alternatives for you before that. Because like fiber, a certain amount of fiber is great for you. It's going to help with your bowel movements. It's going to be great. Too much fiber is actually going to do the opposite effect. So you want to make sure nobody feels good when they're constipated. So if we can prevent that, ladies, like let's try to do that.
Totally. And then that's the other thing with fiber too, is like you see so much like up and down when like people send you like their information for the first time. And it's like, of course you're having digestion issues. Sometimes you'll have 5 grams of fiber, and other days you'll have like 30, and that up and down is so stressful on your gut. Okay, so next thing I kind of wanted to tackle here is like, while we're tackling like nutrition and like quote unquote eating healthy, eating well, what is health actually? Because I know everyone's chasing an aesthetic goal. Usually when people come for coaching, like there's something else going on, but usually they're wanting to drop some weight or things like that, or look a specific way or how they used to, or things like that. And I think like understanding everyone's definition of health is going to be different, but like, what does true health actually look like in your eyes? Everyone's got like a different definition and like what that means to them. But for you specifically, with like the people that you work with and yourself, like what is health actually look like to you? Because I think people have this idea of like what it looks like versus like what it takes to be there and what it actually is, if that kind of makes sense.
So there's two takes I want to take with this one. I'll go my perspective, and then I'll go the perspective that I really work and ingrain in my clients. So my perspective is like I come from competitive bodybuilding. And when I would say the first 3, 4 shows I did, you look good. Damn, do you look good. You're lean. Nothing about that is healthy. Okay, I'm telling you right now. The way you train, not good for you. The way you eat, how lean you are, not healthy. But from an outside perspective, damn, she looks healthy. But truthfully, no. And you can't live that way. Like that is not longevity and health overall. Now, where I'm at now, I'm doing yoga 3, 4 times per week, got my cardio, outdoor walks, resistance training. I wake up in the morning and I feel good. Like I wake up, I'm not grumpy, I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm ready to take on the day. That to me is health. So now with my clients, we tap into this as well. It's like when they start with me, I always get them to write out or try to create awareness. How do you feel right now? Usually it's grumpy. It's grumpy. I'm feeling tired, exhausted, I'm in pain, and I just want to lay in bed all day. Something around those lines, right? Very relatable. And then like 4 months down the road, 3 months down the road, we reassess. They're eating better. So they have more energy levels. They're more mentally sound and stable, right? They're stronger. They don't have those aches and pains. So eating healthy is so much more than only losing weight and looking good. It's about feeling good on the inside, and that just carries out to everything else.
Yeah, and I think people have this like physical picture of what they think like quote unquote health looks like. And it is like the bodybuilding type stuff, the six-pack abs, being really lean. And like I don't think they realize the percentage body fat that's actually like healthy for like having good hormone health and feeling good and energy and like longevity and mortality risk and all those things is much higher than like what they actually think it is. Because typically the pictures they'll show me, because everyone knows like the pictures I'm talking about, where it has like different women all lined up, and like of course like different depending on how tall you are and stuff, that looks totally different. But it's like 8% body fat versus 12% versus like 20. And most people, it's like around that 20% or even a little bit higher body fat percentage, which is like the norm-ish. But the picture they're looking at is like 6% body fat, 8% body fat, which is really hard to get there. And you don't stay there, like especially when like we can't train the way we used to. And like we don't have like endless hours to spend in the gym, and like putting on muscle takes time and all of these things. Like it's just understanding that like that picture you're seeing in time is probably not how that person looks all of the time, because it's not realistic to maintain. So like when you were doing like the peak of like your fitness shows and stuff like that and the bodybuilding, like with like your top physique where you would have been like cutting and all that kind of stuff, like how did you feel during that time? Because I think a lot of people need to understand that aspect of things, like the sacrifice that comes with like that physique, but also realizing like you can't stay there.
Absolutely not. That is not sustainable. And like when you're that lean, think about that. When you eat, if you're in an extreme calorie deficit, you have zero energy because your body is literally running on fumes. But if you have stored fat, you're now actually tapping into those stored fat for that energy. But when you're that lean, you don't have any stored fat. So you are literally just running on fumes and whatever artificial caffeine or energy that you can put into your body. It's not good as far as physical movement goes, let alone mental, as like your mental state either. So you are exhausted. You're probably grumpy. Let's be honest. It's pretty accurate. Irritable. It is not a way to function in day-to-day life.
So what did your kind of routine look like at that like peak? Like what did life look like in terms of like training, nutrition, social life, that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. So when you want anything in life, obviously there's sacrifices that need to be made. Bodybuilding would be a prime example of that. It's like you think you can have a social life, and if you are looking to get that first place trophy or do well in a competition, you have to make those sacrifices. And when you're spending 2, 3 hours in a gym, it does, what's your sacrifice? Are you going to your social event or are you going to hit your workout? You're going to hit your workout. So there's huge sacrifice there. So social life, non-existent. When I was doing my last show, I'll talk about that one in 2019. I was actually managing corporate gym. So I would do like in at 6 a.m., 8, 9 hours of work, and then a 3 hour workout. And then I would literally crawl out of the gym into my car, drive home, and just pass out or eat whatever meal or prep whatever I had to, and then pass out. And then I do the same thing over and over again up until the week of my show.
Yeah. And like, that's not the way you want to live your life forever. And I think this is also where like people's expectations with like where they feel they quote unquote deserve to be versus like where they actually are. I was listening to a podcast by Taylor Welch and I like him. Like he's so smart. Sometimes he says stuff and I'm like, ooh, that's a bit of a slap in the face. And I don't know how I feel right now. But one of the things that he said was, you are likely in the position, like life likely put you right where you deserve to be. And I was like, oof, that is like not always accurate for everything. Obviously, you can't like control certain aspects of like the financial position that you were growing up or not being able to like whatever, go to schools or things like the right. There's always exceptions. But like with health stuff, like you'll see people who are like, I should have lost more weight by now. And it's like, okay, but you have to take responsibility for the choices that you've made. And like you do have lots of flexibility. We aren't going to be like, you have to do this. Like, here's what we recommend. Here's what we want you to do. But ultimately, if you're going to go have that social thing and have 4 glasses of wine, or you're going to do all the desserts and stuff, that's fine. I'm never going to make you feel poorly for that. Like, that is your decision. But like, then you have to take responsibility that you made that choice. No one made you do it except you, right? That was your decision. And now you also take responsibility for the consequences that come with that as well. So it's like having to build some awareness around like, okay, so if we want to see more change or do more things, that does require more sacrifice. But people want this like, well, I want to have this and this and this and this. And it's like, okay, but to get to here, these are the necessary steps, or it's going to take you longer to get there, which is fine. So you have to make those decisions and take the responsibility for those choices. And like, how did you come to that decision to make that choice? Like, what was the thought process leading up to it? And if the thought process was, I just want to have fun with my friends, awesome. That was more of a priority then than your health goals. And that's fine. Like, I'm okay with that. But are you okay with that? And I think that conversation ends up being like a bit of a can of worms and can be a lot. But I think that is like a really big thing as well. And I'm sure you probably see that as well. Hey.
All the time. Like when you do your check-ins with your clients and they should have been the goal was to be down 4 pounds more or 5 pounds more. It's like, well, we need to reflect. And usually when you politely call them out and create awareness around their habits, right? They usually don't like it being called out a
Mm-mm.
little bit, but it is true. You have to take ownership over that. It's like if you're at point A and you want to get to point B, then we need to be realistic about what it takes to point B. And that's exactly what it makes a great coach. It's like, if you want this, this is what it's going to take. And if you're not willing to do that, then that's okay. But you need to accept that decision because if you want it that bad, there's going to be some sacrifice made.
Yeah. And it's like, and if you're not willing to do X, Y, Z to get here kind of on this timeline, then you have to adjust your expectations. And I
Absolutely.
think a lot of people don't love that, right? But it's like if you're working for a promotion at work, the expectation is, okay, if I actually start doing the things and like doing the habits and the goals and all the things that they're wanting me to do and overachieve that way, then my likelihood of reaching that promotion is going to be significantly higher. Whereas I can't get mad if I don't get the promotion if I'm like not putting in the work and like
Someone's working
someone else
harder.
is putting. Exactly. So it's like, I think we just get so caught up on like, I deserve this. I'm working so hard. I feel like I'm putting in all of this effort. And it's like, okay, but feeling versus actually doing. And this is like, we have like a compliance tracker where we kind of like keep track of everything so people can kind of see like a visual, which I think is really, really helpful. And it's not to like point out you're doing poorly. It's like, hey, this is why we're not getting where we want to be. It's good because now we know where the problem is. Like that's a really good thing as opposed to being like, I don't know why this isn't working. Like that's a way worse situation to be in, right? So it's like, okay, so I know where the issue is. I can see like, am I actually being consistent like most of the time? What does numbers actually reflect? Because like if your kid isn't like doing well in a sport, you'd be like, well, you skipped practice this many days, or you're not tossing the football around in the backyard like so-and-so's kid or whatever that is, right? Like you wouldn't be like, oh, that's so unfair. Like you deserve this. Like you would, I hope, be a little bit realistic, right?
You would hope, right? You would hope.
There's always exceptions.
And I think that's a good point. Is like, especially with nutrition, it's like you have 10, 15 years of bad habits that got you to this point. And this is where point A is. We need to be realistic of what it's going to take to get you to point B. Like you can't expect 10, 15 years of bad habits to disappear in 3 weeks, to disappear in 8 weeks, right? Like it's all about building momentum. And most coaches aren't going to go 0 to 100. They're going to break it down so you know exactly what you need to do. 0 to 10, and then 10 to 20, and then 20 to 30. So it truly is a process. And you have to be committed to yourself, and you have to be committed to the process to get to where you want to be. But the reality is that if you aren't committed to the process, you're just not going to get those desired results.
Well, it's like the whole like you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink, right? Like I can give you all the tips, the tricks, the guidance, the goals, the outlines, the resources, all the things. But like you can have the best intentions, like the best intentions. But like intentions don't drive results, right? Like what drives results and gets you to where you want to be are the choices you're making on an everyday basis, not just like the thinking. That would be like expecting your kid to learn how to tie their shoes just by like thinking that, oh, this is how you tie your shoes. Yeah, exactly.
Right?
So I think there is so much like mindset changing stuff. And it's tough, especially when they've done some crazy egregious diets in the past where they've lost weight super fast. And then that's what their expectation is of like how all diets should be. And it's like, is the goal to lose weight and then gain it back? Because I can get you to do that. But like, ethically, I'm not about to do that. Like that's not how I function. That's not how these things work.
Absolutely. And like sustainable habits, like when you see 30 days, lose 30 pounds in 30 days, how long has that person been working out before they gain that weight? And what window did they gain that weight in? Then they lose that weight. What does that person look a year from then? Chances are they're in the same spot or even a worse position from when they started. So like there's a lot of false perception around that, especially in the industry. So yeah, there's 168 hours in the week. How many can you take to just make yourself a priority? Because that's huge.
Literally. So how do you have that conversation with like women in particular? I find we're very like take care of family, take care of housework, and we also have the career and taking care of sick parents, like very much juggling multiple hats and being the taxi mom and all those things, right? And trying to get them to just focus on themselves, even like 5 to 10 minutes. I'm like, let's just get you to like literally lay down 5 minutes. I want you to like bring your resting heart rate down. And they're like, I can't do that. I'm like, you don't think you got, like, you can't take 5 minutes to yourself? Like, how do you start navigating that conversation with people aside from like educating them on the importance? But like, how do you get them to kind of switch that? Because we have had clients too, where it takes time, obviously, but it's like their kids moved out and then they're still reaching out to their kids to see if there's anything that they can like help solve. I'm like, no, 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 they're good now. This is about you. Like we get to focus on you, but they're like looking for fires to put out because that's just been who they are and their identity for so long.
Absolutely. It's so foreign to them. They're like, what is this? But yeah, that's a great one. It's like, especially with my female clients, they give, they give, they give, but they never make themselves a priority. So when they come to me like this, I always create awareness around how are you feeling? Because I think that is the deep root and the cause of everything, all the decisions that we make, right? How are you feeling in this moment? It's like, I'm exhausted. I am worn out. I don't feel like anyone hears me, right? It's like, okay, so now what we're going to do is take the analogy of the empty cup. You have an empty glass and you're trying to give this emptiness to everybody else, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this jug, I'm going to fill this glass and it's going to start to overflow. And now that way you can pour into everybody else's cup. As soon as you put that analogy in there, you ask them, how much better do you think your interactions with everyone's going to be when you have that full cup and your cup is overflowing? And that instantly just like flicks the light bulb in people's head. Like, you're right. It's like, okay, so now you need to trust me. Please just take into consideration my guidance here. And then by the end of the 2 weeks, if you're not coming back to me saying you're right, then you don't have to work with me. But like straight up taking that approach usually does the trick.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like scared to make those changes, or they're like, oh, people are going to think worse of me if I'm like taking more time to myself, or they feel like guilty for like taking care of themselves. And I'm like, oh man, like you will be so much happier, be able to be there for people in such a different way. Relationships will improve. But it's like, let's try this for 2 weeks. And if you hate it and you don't see any improvements, the best thing is that you don't have to do it anymore. Like, I think people are so used to having to be on like a very strict plan where it's like, you have to do this and that and this and that. And they're so used to like fighting that structure, or like it was all or nothing kind of thing. And like, it was either you do this or it doesn't work kind of thing. So when you give them some like leeway almost, or permission to like just test it out, like it might not be for you and then we can try different things. And I think people almost get scared about that because they're like, well, they're so used to this is plan A and this is how we do things, when really what gets you from like point A to point whatever, the end goal, is usually like a little bit of plan A, B, maybe go to M, back up to A. Like it changes so much. And just like, again, that goes back to the expectation of like, what does this actually look like? What is this actually going to make me feel like? How is this going to change my life? Like there's so much unknown and uncertainty, and we don't like taking action half the time if we can't see exactly how we're getting there. And that's why a lot of people just never start, which sucks.
And like that's why working with a coach is so important. I can't build them like how important it is. Like, especially the way the world's shifting right now. It's like working out is not only about looking good, it's about feeling good and it's longevity purposes. So especially when you're taking those approach with the females, it's like it's okay to make yourself a priority because you today deserve this, but you want to know what? Everyone else in your life deserves this too. And you 10 years from now deserves this even more, or you 15 years from now deserves it even more. So it's like taking the first step is always the hardest, but it plays dividends in every other aspect of your life. It's huge.
Yeah, and just having someone to guide you can be so helpful. Like I can't tell you how many coaches and mentors in business and nutrition and training and education, like I have spent like well over hundreds of thousands of dollars in like certs and coaches and mentorship and stuff like that. But therapists and things like that, where just having someone tell you like, this is just the step that we're doing today. I can see your big picture. This is the step that we're taking today to get you closer. I'm not going to even tell you what the next few staircases look like. This is just like a vague outline, but this is like the concrete step number 1 or number 2 that I'm getting you to focus on. Once we master this, then we go on to the next thing. And that can be scary because we all want control so bad. Like that's all we all want is just control, right?
Absolutely. We're stuck in our ways sometimes too. And, trying to get something into your schedule that's not normally there. Yeah, it's going to take some work, some patience.
Yeah. And I think we just all get so overwhelmed with like, wanting to see that whole thing, how it's going to work, the timeline. And I'm like, when is the last time anything you planned ever gone off without a hitch? Like, think of like weddings or birthday parties or like anything you've ever done. When has it actually been like completely, totally perfect? There's always something, and you adapt and you adjust the plan and you continue on, and it's okay. Like, it will be fine. But I think we all just like hang on to this like need to really control the things and know everything. And that ends up being like the thing that cripples us so much that we don't actually get to where we want to be.
And you hire a coach for a reason. And if you do not trust your coach and the guidance that they're going to give you, then they're probably not the coach for you. But there's a reason why you choose your coach, because they're aligned with you, and you have to just trust them because they have your best interest at heart.
Yeah. And sometimes it's just like you're just not ready. You're not ready to make that change. You need to like test some things out on your own first. So like every coach will give you some free advice. Like we do it all the time. Like try those things. See how you feel. Like that'll help you indicate too, like, is this something that's like sustainable? Is this something that I can do? Like you just, because like that's like hiring a financial planner and then being like, oh, I want to have this much money in my bank account. But it's like you don't give them the receipts. You don't like follow the savings plan they give you. And then you're upset because you're not where you want to be. And it's like, well, I gave you lots of different options and choices and nothing has happened. It's like, so either you're not ready or you're like not totally trusting of the process yet, or there's something there that's like preventing you from acting, and you got to figure out what that is. And sometimes it is just you're not at a point where you're confident enough yet, and that's okay. And like, I mean, that happens all the time. We talk to people and they come 6 months later, a year later, and it's like, okay, that's fine. Like you'll do it when you're ready. And there's nothing wrong with that, right?
Yeah. And if it takes some time to get to that point, that's okay. But just make sure that you do try to make yourself a priority in the meantime, because that's huge.
Totally. How do you typically prioritize yourself? Like obviously like we've been doing this for a long time, but like what are some things that you do to make sure that you're like prioritizing yourself so that you can show up as like the best version of you?
Absolutely. So I know, like, I'm pretty strict with my schedule and my personal habits, but I know I fuel my body well, I feel great. Like, so my non-negotiables, like, I'm waking up, I'm having my greens, I'm making sure that I'm consuming my protein. But also, I know it's like if I have a busy schedule ahead of me, I need to go move my body. I'm either getting outside for some sunny walk, putting my favorite tunes in, getting some dopamine flowing, or I'm gonna go to the gym and just prioritize moving my body. Because it's the same analogy I give my clients. It's like you need to show up as your best self to give everybody else your best self. And like I'm all about practicing what I preach. So I'll always make sure that I lead by example. Instead of telling them to do something, I'm going to do it myself. And then hopefully that flows over to everybody else as well.
Yeah, and I think that's like a huge part too is like figuring out what that looks like for you. Like what actually makes you feel good? What fills up your cup? Because like I think a lot of people think self-care is like I got to bust my butt in the gym, I have to book the massages and the facials and do the bubble baths and the manicures and all those things, right? But it's like sometimes it's like maybe you're just having tea outside for 10 minutes, reading a book, or maybe you're just sitting there soaking up the sun. Like it doesn't have to be this crazy, big, huge commitment, especially at the beginning. But I think a lot of people do think of like the really extravagant things, right? Whereas like it's just something that makes you feel good and actually fills up your cup and like energizes you. It doesn't always have to be this like huge time commitment thing. Cause I think that's a lot of things that like kind of push people away from it, that it's going to be too much or too hard or too hard to be consistent with it. That kind of makes sense.
Especially when you have a tight schedule. Like for myself, usually my days start at 6 a.m. This morning, my day didn't start till 8:30. So when I woke up, 6 a.m., I went outside, I grabbed my book, and I sat in front of the pond and I read my book. Something that is easy, doesn't cost money, but you want what? That fills my cup. I truly enjoy that. So simplicity is sometimes key when it comes to those things, because not everybody has the luxury of getting their nails done, or their hair done. Simple things can fill your cup as well. So don't overlook them, because stillness when you have a busy schedule is just a peace of mind.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely like reading or like listening to a podcast. In the summertime, I love just sitting outside, feet in the grass. It's just so soothing to me. Listening to like the birds, like we live out in the country, so it's so nice. But like sometimes it is just going for like a 5 minute walk, or my mom used to do like coloring books or knit or crochet. And it's like, it doesn't have to be this huge commitment. Like you should still commit to yourself, but it doesn't have to be this thing that like, okay, I got to drive 20 minutes to get my nails done. I'm there for an hour, then drive back. Like that's a big time in someone's day. But if like you're a busy mom or you're like got huge work commitments and stuff, it's not realistic. So what that looks like for each person is going to vary so much.
And like I said, being healthy isn't only about looking good, it's about feeling good. So, whatever makes you feel good and enhances your mood and your physical well being should definitely be what you do in your spare time.
Totally. And I think that's like the big thing that people miss about like what health is. It's like, are you happy? Like, do you feel good? Do you have energy? Like, do you wake up being like, ugh, okay, here we go again, as opposed to like, I feel good. I feel rested. I'm looking forward to what I'm doing today. Like, it's such a huge difference. And like, even if you get to your body goal, whatever that is, if you haven't figured out that stuff, is it really worth it? I would garner probably not.
Yeah, you're never going to be satisfied. It's going to be what's next, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, Taylor, this was super fun. Thank you so much for being on here. We've been trying to do this for like seriously months. Our schedules finally worked. So where can people find you if they are wanting to like learn more about you?
Absolutely. So, thank you for having me. I'm happy that we were able to connect and you're in Canada for a bit now. Um, so, mind.body by temple on Instagram is my Instagram handle. And then also, I have LinkedIn under Taylor Temple. And if you want to get to know a little bit more about me and my business, go to my webpage, mindbodybytemple.com.
Awesome. Perfect. So we'll make sure to put all those in the show notes for you guys so that if you want to find Taylor that you can. Thank you so much for being on, Taylor, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.